They didn't even bother to knock when they came for my keys. My mother just stood there, arms folded tight across her chest. My father kept his eyes on the floor. My sister, 6 months pregnant, held her belly like it might protect her from the truth. My mother's words were calm but sharp. They need the space more than you. The space I had rented, the apartment I had renovated, furnished, and paid for every single month. Never late, never loud, never a problem. I handed over the keys, not because I agreed, but because I wanted them to think I did. Growing up, there were always 2 sets of rules, one for her and one for me. She was the fragile one. I was the strong one. She was still learning, while I was the one who should have known better. When she got pregnant, their concern turned into worship. Suddenly, she was the center of their universe, and I was just taking up space. My apartment became the next offering in their shrine of fairness. They told me it was just temporary, but I knew that tone, the one that meant final. So I smiled, packed quietly, and left behind my plants, my favorite chair, even the mug that said mine. I didn't cancel the rent transfer, though. For the first few weeks, I kept paying, wanted them to believe I'd moved on. And in a way, I had. I moved into a small, noisy place downtown. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Every night, I'd sit by the window with a glass of wine, thinking about fairness, how some people talk about it while living off someone else's peace. By the 2nd month, my sister stopped replying to my messages. By the 3rd, my parents stopped pretending to check in, but I kept sending the payments, saving every receipt. Then one evening, scrolling through social media, I saw it, my sister's story. A full apartment tour. My apartment. The same couch I bought, the same rug I picked, the shelves I built, all untouched. Except now her fiancé was sitting barefoot on the couch, drinking from my mug. The caption read, "Our little nest before baby arrives, yay." Something in me flipped. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was focused. The next morning, I went to the leasing office, polite, calm, collected, and asked for the current lease agreement. Turns out, it was still under my name. They'd never changed a thing. My parents had just told me to leave, which meant legally I was still responsible for the rent, and technically still the tenant. So I stopped paying. 6 months later, my mother called, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, we just got a notice from the landlord. The rent hasn't been paid in months. What's going on?" I almost smiled. "Oh, I thought you took over the place," I said lightly. "Didn't you say they needed it more than I did?" She hesitated. "Well, yes, but the lease is still under my name. I finished for her." "I know." They pleaded, said they didn't have the money, said my sister and her fiancé were struggling with a baby on the way. I told them I'd think about it, then hung up. That night, I opened my laptop and started typing. It took 3 drafts to get it right. Not angry, just precise. I wanted every line to cut cleanly, not bleed. I printed 2 copies, one for my parents, one for the landlord. The next morning I sent both, but each had a different attachment. To my parents, I sent a letter. To the landlord, I sent proof, the lease documents, the bank statements, and a signed transfer of tenancy agreement under a new name, my sister's fiancé. Yes, I forged her signature, with her permission, because I wasn't the only one they betrayed. A week earlier, I'd met her in secret. She was exhausted. He'd been cheating. My parents were smothering her. She just wanted out. So I offered her freedom. She only needed to sign a few baby safety documents. In truth, they transferred the lease entirely to her fiancé, legally binding. She didn't even read them, just signed. When my parents opened my letter, it read, "Dear Mom and Dad, I wanted to help, but I thought you'd prefer hearing from her directly, since you asked me to make sacrifices for her comfort. I figure it was fair to finally give her the voice you always took away. Attached is the lease agreement your new tenant, her fiancé, now holds in his name. He's legally responsible for the rent, damages, and eviction. I'm no longer your landlord's problem. You're his. P.S. Tell him the baby deserves a better address." 3 days later, my sister called, sobbing, not because of me, but because he'd vanished. The eviction notice was taped to the door. My parents were panicking. Everything they'd built on entitlement had crumbled, and I hadn't lifted a finger. They lost the apartment. I reclaimed the deposit. And when my father called to say he was disappointed, I said, "Good. That makes us even." Then I hung up. Now, when I walk past that street, there's no anger left, just a quiet kind of satisfaction. Because sometimes justice doesn't need noise. It just needs patience and a well-placed signature.